and welcome to our graduate programs in architecture information session with the concentration on the MArch program. Um, Before we get started, we'll make sure the pointer is working. Okay, do I need to? Okay, it's working now. Okay. So before we get started, we'll start with our land acknowledgement. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans and newcomers, have been invited into the treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect, and we welcome you today. My name is Carlo Parente. I'm the Associate Chair of the Graduate Programs in Architecture here at TMU in the Department of Architectural Science. We're gonna have an introduction about the MArch program, give you a bit of the background. We're gonna talk about why architecture at TMU. We're gonna talk about the thesis, the admissions requirements, the admissions process, who to contact, and we'll open things up for questions as well. For this session, we also will have two current MArch students that will join us that will tell you a little bit about their experience, and they'll be able to answer questions for you as well, and for those of you online. So again, as I said, I'm Carlo Parente, the Associate Chair of Graduate Studies. We also have Mimi Lam here, who is the Graduate Program Administrator, and you'll hear a lot from her, and you'll be emailing her a lot for those of you that are applying. And we also have Aina Aro, who is our Graduate Admissions Officer. So you'll probably end up hearing more from the two of them during the process than myself, but I'm open to questions as well. So Toronto Metropolitan University was established in 1948. We became a degree granting institution in 73. We rejigged our Bachelor of Architectural Science program in 2007. And with that came the introduction of our MArch program. So that was really the first year of our MArch program. And it became accredited with the first cohort in 2010. So it's a CACB accredited degree. And we recently, last year, launched our PhD in architecture program. So just a note here, our BArch Science, that those of you that are here are mostly enrolled in, is a pre-professional architecture program, and it allows you direct admissions into our MArch program once you've been admitted and vetted. So again, those of you that are in our BArch Sci program, it's a 4-year program, and you're admitted directly with needing to do an additional 2 years. So our BArch Sci program has 3 concentrations: architecture, building science, and project management. All 3 concentrations are allowed direct admittance with 2 years of additional studies in our graduate program. So why attend the MArch program at TMU? Critical thinking. We talk about that in our undergraduate program, and we really concentrate on that in our graduate program. So it's about how you think and how you think critically and how you engage in the world and how you translate that into an architectural project or architectural experience. Small class sizes. I feel like a salesman. So just like our undergraduate program, you're used to studios with 1:15 ratio roughly. The same in our graduate program. In our MArch program, we accept a maximum of 30 students, and our studios are usually taught by 2 faculty members. So we're maintaining that 1:15 or 1:14 ratio. This year we have 28 students in our graduate program. Personal supervision. So once again, with that 1:15 or 1:14 ratio. You're getting really one-on-one attention with your studio coordinators. And on top of that, there's a thesis. So in the second year, you'll be doing a thesis where you'll work closely with a supervisor within the program that's related to your topic. Unique thesis project. So our graduate program's focus is really the thesis. Our first year of the MArch program with its studios lead you to the point where you're able to start to define a problem or a topic that you would like to explore through a thesis. The courses are about that. They're about showing you how to go about doing that. And when I said that it's about critical thinking, the first semester studio in your first year and the second semester studio in your first year are different than your undergraduate experiences here. You're actually defining the project, and we're starting to give you the tools of how to define those projects. So that allows you to start to think about your thesis. So your thesis comes through your interests. It comes through your experience in the first year of the graduate program, where the studios almost are like proto-thesis projects. A lot of thesis projects actually come from those first two studios. Workshop, manual and digital. So for those of you that are already in our program, you know that we're well equipped. We have an incredible shop with digital and manual tools, and we really engage in that idea of making and thinking through making in our graduate program. Study trips. So there are a lot of opportunities to learn and explore through these study trips. And traditionally, the first semester studio travels abroad and uses the lens of a different city or multiple cities in order to address an issue, usually at home. So looking at the world through multiple cities. And Toronto, just like in our study trip, we're looking at the city through a lens of a different city. We also use our own city, Toronto, as an urban laboratory. Toronto is our largest city in this country. It's our most diverse city, probably one of the most diverse cities in the world. So these are things that we explore and we engage with. So for those of you coming to Toronto, Toronto is a laboratory. We have architecture from many international firms. Here we're seeing Calatrava's Brookfield Place. We've got the Crystal at the ROM by Daniel Libeskind with B&H from Toronto. We've got the AGO, Frank Gehry. The Sharp Center of Design, OCAD-U, Will Alsop with Young and Wright. Here on our campus, we have the Snøhetta building with Zeidler, your student learning center. So right on campus, you are engaging with world-class architecture. The one on West Bloor and Young by Foster and Partners with the local architect, Core Architects. So one of these super tall buildings going up. And I inherited a lot of these slides, and I noticed that a lot of these were proposals, but now these proposals are actually being built. So Toronto is an urban laboratory where you're not only seeing these proposals for international architecture, but you're actually in a city where the work is getting built. Once again, Toronto has the most number of cranes in this city out of any other city in North America. Actually, there was a stat that was released. I don't know if it's still true, but a year ago, if you were to count all the other cranes in North America, they add up to roughly the number of cranes that are in Toronto. So again, another project is King Street West by Frank Gehry. Another project, initially a concept, but it's currently under construction. One of our graduates from our MArch program is actually working for the developer and contractor He was really interested in super tall buildings and tall buildings, did his thesis on that, and now is getting to work on one of the more popular buildings in the city. We have Bjarke Ingels, another building that's currently under construction. And we also have our local architects. We have Moriyama Tashima Architects, did the Limberlost, a mass timber building that helped define new rules in the city of how to build with mass timber. Yeah, they actually participate a lot in our studios, and there's going to be a lecture by Carol, I believe, on this building in the coming weeks. We have the Ace Hotel by Shim Sutcliffe, another local architect. So we're looking at, international architects building here, and local architects, and you being part of a city that is engaged in that. So our Master of Architecture program is designed to strengthen your ability to think critically, act collaboratively, and create impactful solutions. It's a 2-year program, 5-semester program, and it'll launch your career and prepare you for success in related fields. So once again, it's a CACB accredited program. So this is one step required for licensure. Following graduating from this program, you're able to go directly and do your internship and then write your exams and become a registered architect. And once again, I mentioned that we have the newly PhD in architecture program that is a unique program within the country. It's about research through design. So there's a relationship to our undergraduate program too, in that we talk about these themes, these program themes in our graduate program. So the first 3 themes are really what you need to write about in your program statement when you apply to the school. And I'll talk a little bit about that during the admissions portion. But the themes are sustainable design, emerging technology, and global communities. And I like to think of that as through the perspective of design research and creative scholarship. So once again, that idea of design through research, research through design. And we talk a lot in the graduate program about, drawing and making as a way of thinking. So extending that to a PhD program that is really about that. So again, a lot of the next slides are from our website. So again, you can go to our website, and this is also helping you to navigate it as well. So looking at our Master of Architecture program, the Master of Architecture program is designed to strengthen your ability to think critically, act collaboratively. I already mentioned that. So the 2-year program guides you through your first 2 years of study, two studios, 1 in critical practice and 1 in collaborative practice, accompanied by theory courses and elective courses that are all working together. So it's a 20-month program, full-time, maximum 36 months. So you really go from semester 1 to your final semester with a summer semester in between. So it's 2 full years. So the degree requirements are 2 studios, 5 core courses, 2 electives, 2 collaborative competitions, which are individually run. You pick a project that you develop collaboratively with some of your colleagues. It can be a competition or another design exercise. And it can be related to your thesis topic, or it can be related to any topic. It's an opportunity, again, to explore making through design using your own terms. In this collaborative competition, we've assessed it, and there's a good chance that it'll be reduced to 1 collaborative project for next year. So most likely, those of you entering the program will only have to do 1 of these. And then there's a thesis, an independent research on an approved topic within the field of architecture. You'll be required to publicly present the thesis work, which forms the critical, historical, and theoretical basis for your thesis project. The thesis project must be grounded in architectural praxis, but it's not limited to the design of a building. The final stage is a public juried presentation of your thesis. So there are 4 milestones for this. A lot of you will have the opportunity to see milestone 2 presentations that are going to be happening in the middle of December, and we'll have posters around the school, and you're all invited to that. Just a note, graduate program minimum grade requirement is a B minus. So anything below a B minus is not considered a pass. This is a slide from a previous website, but it helps to kind of show you a little more clearly the breakdown of the program. So you have studio in your first fall semester. So it's the studio and critical practice. And then you have a seminar and critical practice that is related to the studio usually. You're doing readings and discussing those readings, and there's a dialogue with the critical practice studio. And there's a contemporary architectural theory course as well that also engages in ideas of the studio. So the faculty that teach talk about the idea of the studio, and we collaborate and we make sure that knowledge is shared so that we're honing all of these courses to directly feed into the studio as much as possible. So in the winter semester, you have another studio. This is the studio and collaborative practice. And again, it builds on your first semester studio in that you're working in teams of 2 in this studio, and you're developing a project. And usually this project is developed on your own terms. As we move forward, the program is the second semester studio is going to focus more on the techne and the idea of novel making as a way of critically looking at practice. And then we have our thesis and design research course. So this is a course that starts to prepare you for thesis. It's about methodology. It's about defining what a thesis is, how to write an abstract. So this is kind of your first take at the thesis. And during that semester, you'll have an opportunity to get exposed to different potential supervisors, and you'll be able to start to choose your supervisor for the following year during that semester and as part of this course. And then we have our seminar in critical and contemporary and future practice. So this is a practice-related course, and it's taught, for the last few years, it's been taught by Jennifer Esposito, who's full-time faculty. She's a professor and also a practitioner. So we have a lot of, I'm a practitioner as well. We have a lot of practitioners that are also teaching in the school. And we're all very interested on the future of practice and what that means. And she brings in a lot of people from practice to explore the ideas of what practice is and what the future of practice is. So that's your first year. The second year is, the spring summer semester is where you start your thesis. So during the summer, you're meeting with your thesis supervisor on occasion, and you're starting to research your thesis. And at the same time, you have an elective course. The last few years, we've had an elective course offered that, again, is related to studio. It's about our thesis. It's about data and architecture and how to draw data for your thesis. So then the second semester, you have thesis. You're going to be presenting your milestone 1 and 2 milestones in your fall semester. And then in the winter semester, you're going to present your milestone 3, which is substantial completion, and have your final defense, which is your milestone 4. So back to the fall semester, you also have current topics in architectural praxis. Usually there's 1 or 2 courses that are offered for that. This year we've had a course on indigenous architecture and making and AI. So these are 2 courses that we're hoping to bring back next year as well. And then you have an elective to choose from a list of elective courses. And as I mentioned, your final semester your winter semester is thesis. And this is just really from our website, the current courses, who's teaching them. And next semester, we have Julia and Tura teaching the studio and collaborative practice. Again, as I mentioned, the seminar in contemporary and future practices being taught by Jennifer Esposito. And we have thesis and design research being taught by John Circa. And this is kind of a list of electives that are offered, and these change every year as well. This is kind of a summary of our course. Once again, this galaxy where in the fall term, the studio and critical practice, we have the seminars in contemporary architectural theory and the seminar in critical practice feeding into the studio. In the winter studio, we have the seminar in future practice and the thesis and design research being affected and feeding into your winter and collaborative practice. And then we have thesis and research and design electives for your final year. Okay, so looking at the studio and critical practice. So this is, again, your first semester fall studio. The studio and critical practice, we have you're required to research, identify, and confront specific issues and develop an architectural or design response from a critical perspective. Where normative practice approaches the architectural projects as a synthesis of program, typology, site, budget, and other considerations to produce a relatively predictable building solution. Critical practice challenges the architecture to consider innovative solutions that may reside outside the confines of conventional architectural practice. So you can say we flip things a little bit. So very different than your undergraduate studios. So you're required to consider the role of the architect and architectural practice in society from a variety of perspectives, including those as observer, critic, designer, and you explore the role of architecture as a potential agent of change. So this is examined through three primary areas of engagement: sustainability, the impacts of new technologies, and the response to local and global conditions and communities. So again, you're seeing our themes being reinforced in our studio. So this year, we had a travel studio where we took our students to Venice. And we engaged in the Venice Biennale and the topic of the Venice Biennale. And as part of that studio, our students were also able to participate in the biannual session. So we're able to actually have a space and actually have a lecture and discussion with the students about the Biennale. So again, these biennales all talk about contemporary conditions in architecture and about contemporary topics. This year, our studio engaged in the polycrisis, and we looked at Toronto, and we're looking at Toronto through the lens of Venice, really. And we're using not only the Biennale, but we're also engaging with the city of Venice as a living laboratory to explore current themes and issues in architecture. So on top of the Biennale, the students got to explore Venice. We got to see the back of house of Venice. We talked to the craftspeople of Venice. We talked to radical makers and radical people that looked at kind of stopping the big vessels from coming into the Venice Canal. So I believe our students had a lot of fun, and I think this picture proves it. They're all smiling and laughing. So this is at the Biennale outside the Canadian Pavilion, and we're lucky to actually have Vince be part of the Venice Biennale this year with his exhibition there. So again, this was our studio this year, looking at Venice, looking at the Toronto through the lens of Venice. And this was a provocative image that we gave to our students at the beginning of the semester. So looking at Venice superimposed on Toronto. So the density of Venice is almost the exact same size as the Toronto Islands, which is kind of crazy. So this isn't meant to be about our current studio, but just to give you a sense of, we tend, like last year, the students went to Amsterdam, Hamburg, and and Berlin, and studied the various systems of these cities in relationship to Toronto and looked at these cities with that. And this is a project from that studio from Kyle, who's going to be speaking to you a little later as well. So a project that he did with Stenzo. So it gives you a sense of the type of work that they do. So their solution really looked at infrastructure as becoming something that architecture can use to connect the city. And so this first semester studio, you're again using research through design, and you're looking at traditional and drawing research. Here we said ethnographic drawings and drawing data as part of your way of exploring. You're building maquettes, not just architectural models, but maquettes, more conceptual models that allow you to look at your project and your ideas in a different way. And you're developing a proposal. Again, we're not telling you what the project is. You're developing that project on your own or in a group. And we're running a little late, so I'm just going to skip through some of these, but these are examples of like this is a previous project in Venice that looked at mapping the auditory aspects of Venice and sound. This is an example of a maquette and how the maquette was used as an operational model, the silicone model that they were able to map and re-pour different elements to think about citizenship, time, and economy. So again, using abstract thought and abstract ways of thinking to kind of inform a project. Here we see another maquette that looked at questioning a platform, a plane, walls versus floors versus ceilings. So again, an operational model that engaged in that. And a few years ago, we did a studio and published a book called The Pale Blue Dot that looked again at the climate crisis. And we engaged in this process again. And we get a diversity of projects that deal with the research and the interests of the studio. So we had a group of students that looked at post-industrial Detroit, adapting to chaos, looking at Morocco and what would Morocco be like in 100 years? How will we live together? So again, examples of maquettes from that year. The adaptation of Flux and Chaos, that project about Morocco again, looking at different typologies and how adaptation was a means of thinking about the evolution of architecture. A group that looked at suburbia under pressure, reimagining social contracts. So this was a project in British Columbia where they reimagined the block as more of a communal system, a way of increasing density. And this was a project by Nicole Lee and Rita Wang that was the Post-Anthropolis. This is the project on Detroit that looked at how land and other species can play a role in how we think about architecture and what happens if we start to think of an equivalency between all beings and all systems. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is Nicole ended up translating this into her thesis and developed the ideas further and presented a thesis that looked at drawing as a way of thinking. She built some maquettes and drawing machines to kind of think about her project and think about the spaces. So again, you see how the work of the studio carries through to ideas of thesis. So then the second semester, the studio and collaborative practice, architecture is never the product of a single individual. The myths of the star architect, of the heroic and creative genius, is out of step with the reality of architectural practice in our increasingly complex society. Working collaboratively in teams and with input from specialized consultants and stakeholders, groups, students develop the design of a complex building, a design process that inquires into analysis and integrates technical and cultural, social and economic issues. These are all stressed. So this becomes more of a building project, more of a complex building project. And these are some examples from that studio. You can see the variety of projects, but maybe the architectural representation is something that you're a bit more used to, but they're still questioning and pushing the boundaries of that. And more we're going to, again, as I mentioned before, look at the development of tectonics and novel tectonics in the studio. Okay. And then we have our thesis project. So the thesis gives students the opportunities to complete a significant body of independent design research on a topic of their own choosing under the supervision and guidance of a committee. The thesis is a single work of research engaged in via a number of modalities: literature, scholarly, case study analysis, design exploration, best suited to the topic at hand, as determined by the student and the supervisor. So again, you'll notice, and if you come to the design presentations in a few weeks, you'll see that the topics are all varied and the output is all varied too. So again, learning to develop your research and investigate through drawing and making is interpreted very differently, and depending on the supervisor you're engaged with, the outputs are very different as well. The relationship between various research modalities must be highly integrated so as to create a single coherent body of work. Regardless of how the thesis project is framed, students are required to demonstrate mastery of the various skills and abilities developed over the course of their studies and that are commonly used in professional practice in architecture. And again, these are all, there's a lot of examples on our website. So we have a lot of students that are, we have theses that are more developed in terms of a building project that deal with phenomenology and the experiential. And then we have theses that really engage in new tools and new ways of looking at architecture and how digital tools and fabrication tools affect making. Again, there are issues of health and wellness and well-being. There are theses that are about craft. So this was a thesis by Gregor on the etymology of craft from 2020. He actually designed bricks for his thesis and made bricks. And developed a building, a fire station. He really wanted to do a fire station. And it was a beautiful project that he executed and did a wonderful book. And we see explorations in wood through, yeah. And again, so the theses are varied. I'm just going to keep flipping through. And you can see different representational techniques. A lot of theses look at the act of making as a tool, and questioning the body and space and the skin of a building and its relationship to a building. And also a lot of projects that look at globally some of the crises that have evolved. A lot of projects that look at rethinking war-torn areas, rethinking and how do we adapt with existing buildings. This is Yara's project. That was a nice project. So there's a number of projects that you all have access to. So if you go to our shared, the digital repository, you can actually access our thesis projects and go through all the theses from the last decade or so. So our exhibitions and awards. So another good place to see the work of our thesis students is the year-end show, where we exhibit the work in our gallery, and also our awards show, which is coming up November the 20th. So during our awards show, you'll get to see in the building some of our award-winning thesis work and graduate work. You can also see some of our work on our Instagram site. Feel free to follow us. And now I'd like to bring up our current graduate students. We have Hiba Al-Fayez, who's a first-year student, and I'll have Hiba begin, and then we'll follow that with our second year student, Kyle, who will talk about his experiences.
Hi. So it's been 2 months, or maybe like 2 months and a week. So definitely first impressions. I was asked to talk a little bit about why I picked TMU. There's definitely lots of different reasons, but I think the main thing I was drawn to was definitely the small class size, which I think is pretty unique compared to other programs. Like 27 people is a really nice amount of like diversity to have a lot of different people with different like research interests and backgrounds and who contribute a lot to the studio and the environment. It's also really fun and you kind of get close to everybody. It also means you get like a bit more of an individualized experience. I personally picked TMU coming off of the undergrad so I could kind of like hit the ground running and not just like continue with the momentum that you have in fourth year or whatever you're doing before. Because it's a familiar place, same people, and you kind of feel like you can plug back into the school as a GA or whatever to kind of continue to contribute. And I was personally, as somebody who like has a lot of different interests and is not totally sure about what I would want to do my thesis about, still not totally sure. I was really interested in doing the studios and kind of building a bit of a foundation before getting into the thesis. And like through projects instead of like working and trying to figure it out on my own. Okay. How it's different from undergrad. I would say it's very different in a good way. Personally, like again, coming from the undergrad, I wanted it to be very different because like, I had just done 5 years at TMU. I'd say it's like you're very free to explore whatever topics you'd like. And I kind of tried to pick a different topic for every assignment. And you kind of you get a lot less assignments, but you get more time and opportunity to develop them further. So it's really a good like testing ground that first year, at least in the last 2 months. And yeah, also the small class size and individualized experience is very different from undergrad. And then, yeah, there's something else here that I can't read, but that's okay. um, Highlights from first impressions, definitely Venice. That was really amazing. I personally enjoyed it because it was very heavily programmed. Like we spent 10 days in a row, weekends, like sometimes 8:30 to 6 o'clock, doing like really amazing exclusive tours and covering like so much about Venice. Everybody I told that were anytime I told anybody we're spending 10 days in Venice, they're like, why? But it was a research trip and I felt like I learned a lot and took a lot from it, which was really great and special and a kind of a nice way to start off your year. Again, like it's a small class size, everybody's on the same plane, depending on how you plan it. And it was a really good bonding experience also. And then, yeah, one of the highlights has been just kind of being able to learn from my classmates and not only through like listening to people's presentations or the seminar format, which is not a lecture, it's a seminar. So you're discussing the readings, you're coming to the table, everybody having like their own positions and opinions, and you kind of just are able to learn from each other that way. And yeah, but also through like lots of different types of collaboration. Like there will be opportunities for you guys to work together as a group of 27 people or in small groups or working on other kinds of projects. So I think I feel like the class is the best part of it. But I have a lot left to go. So.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. As Carlo mentioned, my name is Kyle, and I'm a second-year Master of Architecture student here at TMU's Department of Architectural Science. Some of you might recognize me as a GA from yours from last year, but now as a second-year student, I'm currently working on my thesis, which I started this past summer. So maybe first I'll talk about like why I came back here and what led me here. And I do want to preface that I actually am an alumni of the undergraduate program here, and I graduated back in 2020. And since then, I do have several years of experience working mostly on residential architecture. And from that experience and from my education, I realized that I knew how to design. I also understood how a building was constructed. And so naturally, the next step was that I wanted to pursue getting my license. So that means coming back to get your master's. And when I was deciding where to apply, I wanted to make sure that I was still learning new things, but I also wanted to make sure that what I was learning was going to be built upon what my past education was. And I understood that here at TMU, the undergrad and graduate program is kind of planned holistically. And that's kind of visible in the accreditation, as well as just how short the program is. And I also knew that from my time here in undergrad that the kind of context and the connections that are available in this program really allows students to have a lot of opportunities in engaging with the industry. So ultimately, this meant that you got to try a lot of things and figure out what it is that you actually like within the field. And many students don't realize this, but I also think that the time that you spend outside of your classrooms is equally as important. And I think in masters, that is kind of like even more important and evident. And so today, despite coming back to the same place, I would say that my experience is very different. And I mean that in the best way possible. You really see how everything you were taught kind of continues to evolve and build. And even theories you touched upon just always kind of expand. And now working on my thesis, you kind of see how supported you are in finding your voice in architecture. Even though it's very much a self kind of directed process, you have a lot of support. And beyond that, I've also managed to be involved in a lot of internal and external extracurriculars. So I've taken part in putting together a symposium on the topic of housing with industry professionals. I've assisted the department through its accreditation process as an accreditation assistant. I've also just last week completed installation at the Azure Human Nature Conference. And so this kind of continues on from like doors open, gallery exhibitions, department council, EDI. So it's been a lot of work overall, but I definitely think it's worth it. And despite being in school, I still feel very connected in the industry, which is what was really important to me coming back from that experience. And I'm also very much looking forward to seeing my education and my experience kind of culminate into a thesis rather than another studio project. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. That was great. And this is an opportunity for all of you to ask questions to our students as well, who have a different insight than I'll be able to provide. So are there any questions for Hiba and Kyle on their experiences or the graduate program? If there are any questions online. Two questions? Yep. Oh, okay. Maybe I'll give you the microphone so that it's recorded.
Typically, when do you expect to start your thesis, or like, does everybody start at like around the same time, or do some people like decide on a topic or take longer to decide on a topic? Like, how does that process kind of work?
So the thesis process starts with your methodology course in the second semester of your first year. Maybe I'll turn this over to Kyle to talk about how that affected his.
Yeah. So in second semester of first year, you do a thesis prep course, and that's when you start actually developing what your thesis topic will be and how you're going to approach it. Many students continue that same topic as they start working full on in their thesis come summer term, and you're expected to start in the summer and you do your first milestone when you come back in September. Some students realize that they actually want to change their topic from that course, but you start building the foundation on like how that process actually happens. And so you start exploring your interests quite early. For me personally, my topic changed a lot through that course, but I think that evolution was kind of necessary to finally settle on the topic that you wanted, because sometimes it's not so much about the topic that you want to do, but it's really about your argument and how you're framing that and how you're designing to explore that research. That really is what a thesis is about. So yeah, it really evolves, but ultimately you started in that thesis prep course and then you're full on in thesis starting in the summer.
I think that was a great explanation. And like there are students that again, we're going to talk about this in a minute. You're also going to be writing an area of interest statement for your application. And for some people, they're writing about what they want to do for their thesis. And we do have students that continue with that right through. And like I showed you with Rita's project in her first semester, first year studio, was kind of the beginning of her thesis, because the work that she started to research and develop in that first project really developed into her final thesis. Okay. Any other questions for Kyle and Heba while we still have them? For the people online.
I just have a general question for like the admission requirements. If we're doing, okay,
So these are really questions for about the first year and second year experience, because we're about to go through the admissions requirements. So any other questions? Okay, let me know if I don't answer your question in these coming slides. Okay, thank you both. Okay, so our admissions requirements. So for the Masters of Architecture like I don't know if both of you want to come up and or get closer, and then you feel free to jump in. So for our Masters in Architecture, you need a portfolio. And the portfolio is probably one of the most important things that we're going to look at through the admissions process. We need your official transcripts and grades, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. There's an English language proficiency test that is required for those that haven't studied and don't have, I believe, more than 2 years of. Okay, great. And then there's the statement of thesis intent, which I just mentioned, a resume and CV that we're asking you to include in your portfolio. And then there's 2 letters of reference. And if you're applying to our program and you have your BArch Sci already, and you've within the last 4 years, we don't require letters of recommendation from our faculty. So we know you. Okay, admissions requirements. So once you've completed a Bachelor of Architectural Science degree or equivalent with a minimum grade point average GPA or equivalent of 3.0 out of a 4.33 scale, your portfolios will be forwarded. In reality, there's a bit of leeway there, and our admissions team is very generous in sending a lot of the portfolios through. And we ask them to do that, and we're happy to review portfolios. And the 3.0 is in the last 2 years of study. There's another requirement. It's either the last 2 years of study or your
GPA is higher. We would record that, but
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Possession of the minimum requirements do not guarantee acceptance. Preference will be given to applicants with the best qualifications. The AMARC program offers preparation for entry into the profession of architecture to students admitted with an undergraduate degree in architectural science or equivalent. So our architectural science degree is a pre-professional degree, which means that you've gone through the process of having a strong undergraduate education that also has a comprehensive design studio as part of that. So for our students, that's your 3rd year integration studio, where the studio is a bit more technical and you're looking at all these systems comprehensively. So you must hold an undergraduate pre-professional degree in architecture that is part of an accredited professional program, CACB or equivalent, College programs and degrees that are not part of an accredited architecture program are normally considered insufficient preparation for admission to our program. So in starting the process, there are different steps. One is you go to our Ontario University Application Center web. Yes, sure.
Can jump in. So many of you will already know this application center, the Ontario University Application Center. The graduate program uses the same as undergraduate at TMU, but there is a different way to access that application. So just something to look. You want to go to our graduate studies page and go to the link from graduate studies. So don't start from undergraduate, head right to the graduate studies page to find the online application. Okay, yep, step 2, select the program. That's pretty straightforward. Create your login. I think most of you are already here, so it's pretty straightforward. If you're not from TMU, you are going to start the process fresh. You're going to create your login, and that's going to be, once you have access to your TMU account, that's your everything, all your communications, letters of decision, reminders if the application's incomplete, they all get posted at my.torontomu.ca in your student center page. Yes, $110 is the application fee. That needs to be paid. So once you complete the form online, the last step is the payment, and that means the application is submitted, and that's key. That sets off the next process, which means we will be emailing you to set up your portal so you can upload all the required documents, your statement of interest, your portfolio, copies of your transcripts, including if you're a TMU transcript, we require unofficial copies, your online record uploaded to our system for the graduate review. Yes, and I'm going to talk about timeline because that's one of the things I can speak a lot about. But the application, so it is a process. We are live now. The application goes live every year, late September, early October for the following September's intake. So it's active right now. You could start the process for September 2026. The online application, you want to get that done fairly quickly, and you can do that anytime. We certainly recommend doing it a few weeks before what we call the first consideration deadline, because there is a period of time after you apply online. It's going to take some time to provide the remaining documents and also to get, if applicable, your references. So we always advise, don't leave it to, our first consideration date is January 19th. That's the date we recommend applying by to make sure you're in the first round of consideration. But if you leave everything, including the online application, to the 19th, it causes panic because you can't complete it in one day. It takes a few days by the time you get the portal access. So that's.
So this next slide is about portfolio, really. So the portfolio is a collection of your work that demonstrates your high level of competence in all aspects of architectural design and representation. It should include work done at school and in professional practice. So we're asking you to submit a PDF and to include a cover page. These are requirements. So all of your portfolios need to have the words Master of Architecture portfolio, your name, your mailing address, telephone number, email address, and other contact information. Page 2 of the portfolio must be completed PDF with a statement of authorship. I don't know if I have that within here. Let's see. There it is. So this needs to be included. That is really saying that the work is your work, and it needs to be part of the submission for us to review your portfolio. Okay. A lot of these are repeats, but here, let's. Oops.
I'm just going to throw in, you'll see the fields when you apply. Don't leave anything blank, even if you think you can leave it blank. So international students will automatically see the English language proficiency field, but if you're a student here, you don't technically need it. You still have to upload a document to make sure the application completes itself. You would just simply state currently a student in TMU, but so the goal is not to leave anything empty, the fields.
So again, page 3 and 4 must be a one-page summary of your CV and a one-page summary of your statement of thesis intent. Please note that these are in addition to the separate submissions for each of these documents, which are also required to be uploaded as separate files. So that's sometimes confusing. We'll be asking you to submit your CV separately, and we'll be asking for the statement separately, but we also want this as part of your. So the length of portfolio, it may include up to 30 additional pages, including pages of 15 two-page spreads. It may include images of creative work in any media. If your work is heavily video-based, please contact the associate chair prior to submitting your application. So we're really looking for a portfolio, not only of just your undergraduate work from first year to the following year. We want you to curate your portfolio. Think about your statement of intent. Think about how the portfolio talks about who you are and what you're interested in and what your abilities are. And if you've had a lot of experience, please do include that practice work in there. Labels. All work must be clearly labeled. Identify the name, title of the work or project, the medium and date of work, and provide any other information regarding the work submitted. If work was produced in a professional context, identify your specific role. School group work must list the names of each member. Again, we're not accepting hard copies anymore. These are all PDFs that need to be uploaded as part of the process.
You only have one opportunity to upload. If you make a mistake, be very careful. So be sure what you want to submit is what you want to submit in that field. 'Cause once it goes through, changes are not going to, they're pretty close. They're very difficult. They'll really delay the application if you have to write to us to make a change. I had another note about, oh yes, uploading. There's also just a little tip. When you upload your resume, for example, you download it or upload, I should say, there's a step 2, you have to submit preview, which is actually the check moment where you get to look that it's the correct document. Then you press submit. You have to do both steps to make sure the document goes forward. And one way to check that everything's gone forward, after you've finished everything, just log on to your TMU account and make sure there's nothing left in your to-do checklist. Everything is cleared.
Okay, this is upon admittance. If you've been admitted into the Masters of Architecture program and have confirmed your offer, you'll be required to submit official final transcripts in sealed envelope. Now, if you're
That's a little out of date. We are accepting electronic copies for external students. If you're TMU, we will check online. But for those of you, if you know you're proceeding to this path and you're completing your degree in the summer, please keep us posted because that's where we need a little bit of back and forth once exchange courses or summer courses come in. But otherwise, we do check online that you've completed.
So that's one question that we get a lot in terms of those of you that are interested in taking a summer studio. Yes, you can take your summer studio and still be admitted into our MArch program. It means that your transcripts get sent a little later. But just to let you know, in our current cohort, first year cohort, we have 4 students that were part of last year's study abroad travel studio. Portfolio we talked about, English language proficiency we talked about. So this is like a guide. The portfolio I'd say is worth about 30%, the GPA about 25%, statement of intent 25%, CV 15, references 5. So we're looking at you holistically as well, and part of that holistic process is also an interview. We've started in the last few years interviewing, not all of you. Some of you will get an acceptance based on the strength of your work right away. But a lot of our good students will also be interviewing you, and we'll be interviewing a lot of different students at different stages. So look out for those invitations as well. So why attend? Again, critical thinking, small class size, personal supervision, unique thesis, making lab, study tours, and Toronto. So again, if you have questions.
That email is, it's actually, the MArch email is not correct, just because the PhD email is the same. Sorry, the MArch email is no longer in use. Just use gradarch@torontomu.ca.
I don't know if you want to, is there anything else? that
Any
you wanna-
admissions questions before?
Can you guys speak a bit about the timeline of, I know the applications, the latest point you mentioned, but when would we hear back? And then when would we hear maybe like the first wave of like interviews and stuff?
That's a great question. That was what I was going to talk about. So the way the process works is first consideration deadline is January 19th. That's something that we want you to aim for because that's when we look over the general portfolios or applications. Once you submit that, that's also a date that we kind of use as a guideline. I mean, give or take, early February still works, but basically we would use that to calculate GPAs. So the majority of our program funding starts to be for that first batch of students. So for the people that are going into the interviews and stuff, that's when that process starts to get reviewed. And for all the students that are probably like with an A- average for the first 2 years, we look at your applications and submit because your applications is used for the OGS competition. So program funding is one that we look at in consideration with the other applicants for that year. But OGS, the deadline is March 3rd or early March, basically. So when we review the first consideration deadline, we're looking for students that might be included in that scholarship. And then also program funding that we give, it depends on what we get every year. And so the amount that you get offered, if you get offered, is included, the minimum amount is included in your offer letter. But we reevaluate that at the end of our admission cycle based on who's actually coming, and we reallocate funding. So what you get in your offer letter is the minimum amount. There may or may not be changes, but you won't get less than what you get offered.
And this is where what we're not able to do is give you a guaranteed amount of funding for GA ships.
Right.
So which are now called AA
Yeah,
ships.
academic assistantships.
And Kyle talked about his, HEBA also has 2 AA ships, I believe. So these are where you're helping to either teach and grade courses. And it also is a substantial amount of money that supplements your tuition.
I also want to say we generally use the term 2 years, but the program is designed to be completed in 5 terms. And you don't pay per course, you pay per term. So if you're just working on your thesis, you pay for that term. If you extend your thesis, you pay the additional term. And there is no part-time part-time program for the MArch. You are paying full-time fees for every term you are registered. If you take a leave of absence, that's a different story and that extends your time, but the maximum time is 3 years to complete your degree. And then I want to go into the response process. So for the way we do things in terms of admissions is when you apply, the people that gets considered, I'll probably get the first batch of decision made to send out probably late February or early March. That's not the decision for OGS. That's just the deadline that we have to submit to the school for OGS. But we send the first batch of offers. So we have a space for 30 students. Historically, in the past, we've also received about like 300 applications. So 30 students get accepted. We'll probably send out a little more than 30 offers. But that's the number of spots we have. So we'll send it out, but during that same time, we're also going to send out our first rejections. After that, so if you're in the zone, to be fair, I don't the last time, last year, the last rejection or when we finally made the decision was almost late July, right? So there are people that have to wait until that point to get a decision because It's based off of the decisions of the first offers or whoever gets offered, right? So as the decisions come back, we make offers continuously. We do have a wait list, so you'll be on the wait list. We'll let you know if you're on the wait list during the same time, and then your decisions go based on that. Sorry. It is a long process for the people who are still being considered. And you know more quickly if you are being offered or if you are being rejected.
Any other questions? Any questions from the people that are online?
No questions.
No questions.
Oh, yeah.
For the OUAC portal, can we still use the same OUAC portal we used for our undergrad application or no?
I think you should be able to use the same ID password, your TMU password. So I want to, sorry, you're doing UAC. No, I think you start fresh. But I apologize. I don't have with absolute certainty, but I think for OUAC, I think it's a different application, the graduate application. So proceed as if I would start fresh. Sorry.
There's an online question. Is there any info regarding the travel for first semester? Carlo, take it away.
We've been discussing it. We haven't finalized it, so I don't want to say what it is just yet. But it's and I'm just going to say that wherever we end up going, it usually is surrounding some sort of biennale or architectural event, so that we can use the discourse of that event to inform the actual studio. Again, we've had students in Venice. We've had students visiting Chicago, the Chicago Biennale. We've had students in previous studios that did the Amsterdam, Berlin. So the location will be great. That's all I can say. Any other questions online or in person? Okay, no. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. And again, we look forward to your applications. Feel free to reach out to any of us.